To burn or not to burn? Just recently at this sustainable house, we've started cleaning up a couple of scrubby areas that we want to use as paddocks for the Dexter cattle, and eventually these will be paddocks where we'll have a couple of cows in here that will be for dairy. Now, as you can see, this is the one of the paddocks that we've been cleaning up. This is about a half-acre paddock that has been cleaned up here. You can see some fencing posts down the end there, and as you can see, this is quite clean. It's quite open. There's a bit of grass cover over this, native grass cover. It is quite patchy because of the heavy tree cover that was here previously, and you can also see evidence of some of the stuff that we've moved, so it was really quite messy. In fact, you can get an idea of just how messy it was when you look across the other side of this tree line here, and you can see that this paddock over here is exactly the same as this one was. It was just continuous, and that hasn't been cleaned up at all. So this brush cover at the front here is typical of the whole thing all the way through. So over the last couple of months, I've been doing some work in here. I've also had a woofer, Letitia, in here doing a bit of work for me as well, and a neighbour has helped me out with a couple of the larger trees and stumps. And what we've done is we've actually moved a lot of this stuff, and we've piled it, mostly anyway, piled it into these tree runs. Now, in between these two paddocks, because there'll be one on that side obviously, is a 4 metre between this wire and the wire over there, is a 4 metre wide section, and this will actually grow tree lucerne and other hedgerow species in here that will provide habitat. It'll provide feed as well for my animals. It'll provide feed, habitat for native wildlife. So what we've done is we've taken all the sticks and the logs and the stumps and all of that sort of stuff, pushed them into here. You can see quite a large stump we managed to move, the neighbour and I. And the reason we did this is twofold. One is that within all this stuff, and you can see there's quite a lot of it here, we're not in the sun, but you can see there's quite a lot of it along here. All of this contains massive amounts of carbon. Now, if I burnt that, as traditionally would be done, all of that carbon would be liberated into the atmosphere. That certainly wouldn't help the greenhouse warming solution problem, but it certainly wouldn't be a major issue either. But more importantly for me is that I have this soil, which, as you can see just down here where it's bare, that is absolutely, almost has absolutely no carbon in it at all. So I want to keep that carbon. So by piling it into a pile like this, assuming we don't get a bushfire, but that's another story altogether, that this will actually rot down in place here in situ and add that carbon back to the soil. Ants, termites, millipedes, bacteria, fungi, a whole host of little animals and living organisms will end up living in here, and will be breaking that down into the soil underneath here. That will obviously help grow my tree species that I want to put in there. The other thing it does is it forms a very rough and ready mulch. There's an immediate mulch here, and whilst it might look a bit of a mess, if I come in here and I say, all right, I want to put a tree lucerne in, if I plant it in that little hole there, it'll grow up quite happily amongst all this, but all of this rubbish around it will provide it with some mulch, so that will be very, very useful. At the top here you can see there's another larger pile of sticks and things that have been moved off this area, and a little bit off the back at the top there. Again, we're providing habitat up there, primarily for lizards, birds, frogs, snakes. I mean, you name it, they're all going to live in there. There's a couple of wombat burrows scattered around, and over time as the cattle come on here, I wouldn't be surprised if the wombats move up and actually start building their burrows up underneath these up there, which is just fine. I mean, they need to live somewhere too. And when they're up there, out of the paddocks, out of the way, they're not going to cause many difficulties at all. So the next step for this particular paddock, now that it's relatively clean, I mean, we've had a bit of tree fall from the winds the other day. The trick now will be to fence it. So we're going to have to fence this half acre, and then we'll bring the cattle in here just to graze this off lightly, take them out, and then let it regrow. The theory is that we're going to have 4 half-acre paddocks down here, and another half-acre paddock just a little bit further away. And the cattle will rotate between these paddocks. We'll use a temporary electric fence down the centre of the paddock to lock the cattle into half at a time, into a 1/4 acre at a time. And the idea is that I'll spend approximately probably about 3 weeks on maybe 4 at the outside on the half acre, 2 weeks on each of the quarter acres, and then they'll move to the next one. That will mean that this paddock, once the cattle have been on here for say 3 weeks, they'll be off this paddock for about 12 weeks to allow it to regrow before they come back on. So hopefully over time we'll actually improve the quality of this pasture under here. It'll change over from being a little bit scrubby to a little bit more useful stuff for us, and yeah, and hopefully we'll end up with 4 or 5, in fact, very nice little dairy paddocks that will have, you know, probably only 2, maybe 3 cows in at a time.